All right, everyone. In our work, we often deal with the echoes of a client's past, right? But what if some of those echoes aren't entirely their own? Today, we're going beyond the textbook. We're stepping into the role of investigators to explore the incredibly complex inner worlds of our clients and maybe even our own. So think of this as a clinical investigation. We've got a set of symptoms, we've got two very powerful theoretical lenses, and we have a puzzle to solve. Our job here is to follow the evidence, even if it takes us to the very edge of what we think we know about the mind. Let's get started. So here it is. This is our central mystery. You have a client who is being tormented by a voice that tells them they're worthless. Now, is this a part of them? A wounded piece of their own history that we can work with and heal? Or is it something else entirely, an intruder? To figure this out, let's look at two cases that are, on the surface, deceptively similar. Okay, so meet Samantha and Sherry. You look at their files, and they seem almost identical. Both 37, both successful professionals, and both are just plagued by this punishing inner critic. Now, our standard protocols might tell us to use a similar approach for both of them, but as we're about to see, that assumption could lead us down a completely wrong and potentially harmful path. To understand why, let's bring in our first diagnostic tool. Our first tool is a really modern and powerful one, Internal Family Systems, or IFS, as I'm sure you know. Think of it as a map to the inner world, a way to navigate the complex dynamics of the psyche. So IFS theory posits that our mind isn't just one single thing. It's more like a collection of parts, an internal family, if you will. We all have parts that act as protectors, we have younger parts that hold on to our wounds, which we call exiles, and then, at our very core, we have this calm, compassionate center of wisdom known as the self. And the whole goal of IFS therapy is to help this self lead the entire internal system. Now, at the heart of standard IFS is this pretty radical idea. There are no bad parts. Even a part that's driving addiction or self-harm is seen as a protector, just desperately trying to shield the system from some kind of deep pain. This principle of positive intent is really the cornerstone of the model, and it's the very idea we're about to put to the test today. Now for our second tool. Look, IFS is a fantastic modern therapy, but its roots, they run deep. They draw on principles developed decades earlier by analytical psychologists. And to really grasp the complexities we're facing, we need to go to the source, Carl Jung. Jung gave us the concept of the persona. This is the polished mask we present to the world, right? The good student, the competent professional, the caring parent. It's absolutely necessary for functioning in society, but it's not the whole story. It's a curated version of ourselves, a compromise between who we really are and who society needs us to be. So the critical question for any depth psychologist is always this: what lies behind the mask? When we do the real analytical work, when we start to strip away that persona, we inevitably come face to face with what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is where we hold everything we've repressed or denied about ourselves. Now, while it can be a source of incredible creativity, Jung was very, very clear that some aspects of the shadow are genuinely destructive. And unlike that no bad parts philosophy, Jung argued that some forces have to be contained and defended against, not simply befriended. And this right here is a crucial distinction. And here's the key connection. Long before IFS, Jung saw the psyche as a republic of autonomous fragments. He called them complexes. This idea of a multiple mind is a foundational concept in depth psychology, and it's one that IFS has really brilliantly put into practice for modern therapists. All right, we have our tools, the IFS map and the Jungian depth lens. Now, let's get back to our cases. Let's apply these frameworks to Samantha and Sherry and see exactly where their stories begin to diverge. This diagnostic checklist, which is adapted from the work of Robert Falconer, gives us a really systematic way to cross-examine that critical voice in each client. As we start asking these questions, two starkly different profiles are going to begin to emerge. Let's go through the evidence together. First, we ask about intent. Samantha's inner critic, when we finally get access to it, reveals a classic protective mission. It's harsh, absolutely, but its goal is to protect her from the pain of failure. Sherry's entity, on the other hand, its intent is purely malevolent. It doesn't want to protect, it literally wants to destroy. Okay, next we look at how it responds to compassion, to the therapist's self-energy. Samantha's part softens. It feels seen, it feels understood. This is a hallmark of an Indigenous part. Sherry's entity does the exact opposite. It mocks compassion, it hates what it calls the light, and it becomes even more vicious. It actually seems to feed on negativity. And finally, we investigate the origin. Samantha's part has a clear biography. It showed up when she was 8 years old for a specific, understandable reason. Sherry's entity has no such history. It feels alien, foreign, and it claims an existence that goes beyond her own life. I think the distinction is becoming pretty clear. So our diagnosis is in. We are not dealing with the same phenomenon here. Samantha's inner critic is an Indigenous part of her internal family. It's a protector that's just become extreme in its role. Sherry, however, is dealing with what Robert Falconer calls an unattached burden, a destructive external energy that has invaded her system. And a different diagnosis demands a radically different treatment plan. You just cannot use the same map for two different territories. And this leads us to two completely distinct paths toward healing. For Samantha, we're going to follow the standard evidence-based IFS protocol. We befriend the critic, we help her understand its positive intent. This lets us get to and heal that young, exiled part it's been protecting. And once that exile is unburdened, the critic can transform. It can shift from a persecutor into a wise advisor. Now, for Sherry, the path is completely different. We do not befriend this entity. Our number one priority is safety. Then, the therapist's role is to help Sherry access her own self-energy to firmly ask the entity to leave. This is an act of extraction, not integration. Only after that intruder is gone can we even begin the work of healing the trauma it was targeting. The clinical takeaway here is crystal clear. For Samantha, the path is integration. The therapist is a facilitator, and the part stays, but in a new, healthier role. For Sherry, the path is extraction. The therapist is a protector, and the energy is removed entirely. Two different problems, two very different solutions. So to put this back into Jungian terms for a moment, Samantha is dealing with a personal complex, something born from the specifics of her own life story. Sherry, she's contending with an archetypal intrusion. She is carrying a piece of the collective shadow, the legacy of systemic trauma and violence that has latched onto her own personal wounds. And this right here, is why our diagnostic work is so absolutely vital. Applying the no bad parts model to Sherry would be an act of clinical harm. It would be gaslighting. It would be asking her to integrate and find the positive intent in a force whose only goal is her destruction. It would force her to take personal responsibility for a transpersonal evil. And this brings us to a really profound question, one that challenges our fundamental models. We're trained to see the psyche as a self-contained unit. But cases like Sherry's, they suggest that might not be the whole story. If some of the forces acting upon our clients, and within them, are not from their personal history, what does that mean about the nature of consciousness, of trauma, and of the very boundaries of the self? That is the puzzle we have to continue to explore.